Sounds like it's good. All right, guys. Okay, here we are. What's up, guys? All right, why did I make that weird gesture? What's up, guys? It's your boy Goosenov, back at it again with the Goosenov Show. Hope you guys are enjoying yourselves. Today, we will be talking about what the future of humanity might look like. What the future of humanity might look like, and let's put into context the situation that humanity is in right now. Now, when I was younger, I used to think, dang, it would have been really nice to live in a time where when we would have been a spacefaring civilization, right? I would have really enjoyed to be able to see the stars. You know what I'm saying? And I think many people have kind of echoed this sentiment where they're like, born too early to see the stars, born too late to explore the world, right? It's a weird little middle time in history. But what I would like to say is that where we stand right now may actually be one of the most important times in all of human history. And not exactly why, for the reasons why many people would say. So let's take a look at what the future might look like. And first, let's go back to first principles. One thing that you probably need for life, or at least humans need, well, it's one thing that humans need, is forgetting air, food, water, all that stuff. One thing we probably may very well need is gravity. I don't know. What do you call it? If you don't have gravity, from my understanding, you lose bone mass. I think there could be vision problems associated with it. Maybe heart problems if you don't really have exposure to gravity. Lots of different things happen to people in zero G. And I think that long term, and maybe this isn't true, but humans are probably best adapted to environments that have at least some degree of gravity. So how do you produce gravity? You've all seen Star Wars and Star Trek and whatever, where they just walk into a spaceship and then there's artificial gravity. And that's always looked at on as something that's like some sort of bizarre, like far future, esoteric space technology. But the thing is, it's real, and we could do it with modern day technology. So there's two forms of gravity. There's gravity in a sense where it's actually usable for people. One of the types of gravity that would be useful to us is, I guess, planetary gravity, where you have a massive object that essentially exerts a gravitational field on a person or whatever, and, well, self-explanatory. The other type of gravity is, centripetal force, an artificial gravity field generated with centripetal force. So essentially, and I don't know, you've probably done this before, where you spin something around. Let's say you spin a bucket around, right? Without centripetal force, the water would fall down as soon as you start spinning it, right? And you've all been on those, or you've seen those, what do you call it? Carnival rides where everyone gets strapped in and then it starts spinning around really fast, and you get sucked into the wall. But essentially that's essentially how you can actually create artificial gravity. If you have a rotating cylinder that rotates to a sufficient speed and is a big enough diameter, you can ensure that people don't get sick, that people barely feel the acceleration. And you could also create an artificial kind of gravity-like feeling that essentially operates the same way. So, okay, that's principle one. The next principle is, and this is something we've already done. You can create an artificial habitat or habitation or whatever you want to call it in space. Now, one thing that I don't think we've completely solved just yet is radiation. The issue with space is that it's filled with cosmic rays, like stars exploding ejects a ton of heavy particles and whatnot, and those go, what do you call it? The fractions of the speed of light. And when you have these particles or other just micrometeorites or whatever's out there, right? It can impact with the human body or other things out there, and from my understanding, it can disrupt electronics. It can cause damage to spacecraft, and it can also cause a bunch of health problems for people who are living in space. And that's one thing we still need to solve, and there are ways to do it. One of them could be you just have a very thick layer of water around a space habitation. But essentially, that's something that can be solved. Other than that, we've created artificial habitations in space that work, right? They're pressurized, they're temperature regulated, and they work. So, okay, let's get to the thesis where we've done enough stuff. In the far future, given the fact that we can create artificial gravity, and given the fact that we can most likely create an artificial habitation that people can potentially live in indefinitely, many people will probably start living in rotating artificial habitats where every single need that people have will be solved artificially. Namely, gravity, water, air, food, all this stuff. Now, let's say you take a look at like one of these artificial habitations, right? Let's say it's 50,000 pounds, or let's say it's 500, 600, 1,000, 10,000 tons or whatever, right? It's a big space station. It's pretty big, but compared to a planet, an artificial habitation is probably much more, I guess, much more efficient in the way that it utilizes the mass that goes into it for the sustainment of life, because it's all like very much engineered to be that way. In science fiction, what people say is, oh, you know what? People are going to go and just colonize planets. We need to find a habitable planet. We need to find a habitable planet. I think that that's a very unrealistic way of approaching, how'd you say it? An intergalactic civilization. Because we're probably never going to find a planet that's just like Earth. Just everything is very fine-tuned for life on Earth, and I'd say I'd be surprised if we can find something that's similar enough so that you don't really need a habitation. So there's really two alternatives. You either colonize planets where you just need to build a habitation on top of it, right? And then also you have to worry about, step back. We don't need to worry about much, but you can create a habitation on a planet, and then I guess you do have to worry about getting out of the gravitational field, so that's a problem. And the planet itself is a very inefficient use of resources, just because all of the mass in the planet is going into making sure it's sticking together, rather than, being productive to your, the structure of your habitations and all this other stuff, right? So, anyway, planets, I would say, aren't very good use of mass in space. The alternative is we can use artificial habitations, rotating, we call them O'Neill cylinders, that can house, let's say, 100 to 1,000 to 40,000 to 1,000,000, whatever number of people. But things that can be fine-tuned for life. Now, the vision of the future that I'm proposing, which I'd say many people who study what potential future human civilization could look like. Many of the scholars in this area basically, I would say what I'm saying right now. In the future, people will start utilizing the mass in stellar systems and constructing these rotating O'Neill habitations, rotating O'Neill cylinders. And maybe it's not even just an O'Neill cylinder. There's a lot of different things you can build, but that's the most simple one. But people will probably start building networks of these complicated space, things. And eventually, when a sufficient time has passed and we've reached a Kardashev 2 civilization or something like that, you're going to have a massive swarm of these habitations orbiting around various stars. And that's essentially when was it Frederick Dyson or something? Dyson, when he came up with the concept of the Dyson sphere, he didn't think of it as, it's just a giant shell around a star. He was thinking about this. It's a swarm of these, space habitations around a star that are so dense that they essentially take most of the energy that comes from the star. We can call that a Dyson swarm. But that's probably what future human civilization is going to look like, which is pretty cool. And the cool part about this is, right, if one of these habitations can house, let's say, 10,000 people, and you have like how many of these habitations would you need to blot out a star? I mean, you'd probably need billions, maybe even trillions of these things, right? What's 1 trillion times 10,000? You do the math. But it's very realistic, I would say, that if we can get there as the human species, if we can get there, and if there isn't like some major great filter right in front of us that prevents us from getting to that magnitude, I would say it's realistic for us to get there. And that would mean that, just around one star, you'd have trillions of people. Let's I don't know. I'm not gonna find the thing, but you'd have trillions of people around each star, and you have millions to billions of stars in the galaxy, right? So potentially you could have 1 trillion times a billion or whatever. Or actually, I don't know if 1 trillion is a decent estimate for K2 civilization, but let's say like 100 billion. 100 billion people per star times a billion times a billion. Anyway, the point is, in the future, the potential number of people and living beings, for that matter, is probably going to reach an unfathomable amount. And the crazy thing is, that's real. It's not like, I'm just making it up and it won't ever happen. It's not like this is Lord of the Rings or something that's completely, like Star Wars, the Death Star, blah, 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 it's aliens. No, this is something that most likely will happen. And I think everyone on Earth should be striving for this to happen, because this is it seems to me to be the only pathway that humanity can really go in. There's 2 paths. Either one, we stagnate and we stop progressing and we die and we stay on Earth. We stay on Earth and we die. Or we go into the stars, and that's the way that it would happen. So, anyway, point is, why is our time where we live right now, at this time in history, why is it so important? And I would say it's extremely important because the 7-8 billion people that are alive right now, we hold on our shoulders trillions upon trillions and trillions of people in the future. And the decisions that we make today ensure whether these people live or die. And I don't think it's a given that this future will happen. I say that it's likely if we don't screw things up. It's likely that it will happen if we don't screw things up. But we don't know if we won't screw it up. So at the end of the day, the point of the time that we live in right now is to, in my opinion, create an interface and a way of interacting with technology that is responsible and will ensure that we don't end up accidentally destroying ourselves somehow. I mean, let's say, what if plastic turns out to be something that like kills you in 5 years once it enters your bloodstream, or I don't know. That's probably not the case, but let's say plastic did something like that, right? Or after a certain number of years, like whatever. And let's say it became like it's ubiquitous now, right? We haven't really had plastics for a very long time. We don't really have very long case studies of what plastics do, but we're just using it everywhere, right? And I'd say that's a very dangerous thing. That's something we should not do ever again in the future. But let's say that plastics actually turned out to be something horrible, and humanity died from it, right? Which probably wouldn't happen, or humanity was like very crippled, or like let's say millions of people died from it. We need to ensure that as technology gets more advanced and more advanced and more advanced, we ensure that when those new technologies come about, we know how to interface with them responsibly, and we don't just jump in with 2 feet and, experiment with it on the entirety of humanity. I mean, that's one opinion that I have. And another one is just to make sure that, we don't stumble, fall, go backwards, or start spiraling in a direction where we never come up to where we are, right? Anyway, those are my 2 takeaways. So the goal of us right now is to ensure that the future can happen more than ever, because right now is the time where, most modern technology has come to exist in a very, 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 very recent amount of time, right? Humanity has been alive for, 100,000, 200,000 years, something like that. We've had our modern technologies, our modern way of life for maybe 100, maybe even 200 years, maybe 300 years, but I'd say 2 to 100 years. And we need to figure out how to not destroy ourselves. That concludes the, non-premium portion of this talk show. You can find the rest of this episode on Gusnov.com. And Gusnov.com. Check that out. I think you'd really like it. Gusnov Premium. We have hours and hours and hours of content. A bunch of stuff from unreleased comics to unreleased podcasts to unreleased videos. Stuff that is years and years in the making. And I think that you guys would very much like it. We have, I think, a 5-star rating right now. Lots of people have subscribed already. Tons of people have subscribed already. And lots of people are telling me how good it is. And I think you guys should definitely check it out. See it for yourselves. And at the end of the day, one cool thing. There is a 1-week free subscription period. So you can sign up. You don't need to put any money down. And for free, you could look at all my content. You could download everything if you want. You could literally download the raw MP4s, MP3s, MP2s, MP1s, all that stuff, put it on your computer, and then leave. You could just leave, and it doesn't matter. And unsubscribe and whatever. And you have all my content. You can do that right now. Right now. And yeah. Do it now before I change my mind. See you later, guys. Bye.